of information that is available, I tried to condense as much as possible into one presentation. I'm going to give an overview of the application, talk a little bit about the architecture, and then a little bit more specifically about the SDK and its components, the ADK and the RDK. I'll wrap up the presentation with a little bit of discussion about some of the dependencies and issues that we see with deployment in the workstation environment and into production. I have a slide to start discussion of next steps, and hopefully we can do some Q&A. This, in some areas, is a little high level, so I apologize if it's not as deep as some people would like, but hopefully this does spur a lot of questions, either today or via email, so that we can come back and give some more presentations in more specific areas. We're here, and so like I said, we hope to have some time at the end for questions. If not, I do have an email address that's available for posting questions. I've just discussed with Peter, we will, whenever we receive a question, we'll have a developer on the team answer that question, and then we'll post it to the forum so that everybody can see the question and answer. Okay, here. So, trying to keep up with my notes. In 2014, Dr. Cullen gave a presentation on Vista evolution, and in that presentation, a key goal of the program was interoperability and a single point of care for veterans. eHMP is targeted that replacement, and to be that application is going to replace CPRS. It will accomplish this by having integrated standard-based data and integrated into the core clinical applications. eHMP consists at a very high level of the UI and the back end. And today we're talking a little bit about the UI, and the component that we're talking about today is the SDK. Unfortunately, I did not have the thought to put a demo together for the UI. We will try to do that in a future presentation. But in the absence of that, we did have a couple of screenshots we wanted to share with you. This is an example of the view that a clinician would see logged into the eHMP example or application. It shows use of multiple applets within a single window interface. These applets are presented in a configurable manner, so the clinician decides which applets they want to see on the view, and inside the applets there's some config also available to them. A particular view, you can see examples of applets for immunizations, medications, and allergies, just to name a few. It shows an example of the text search functionality. This is just something that's a little new. We're continuing to refine it, but this allows the clinician to go in and just do kind of a global search using just a few letters either on the screen. Okay, eHMP has some basic functional goals. This is a high-level list of our functional goals. It's fairly, I guess, intuitive. You want to view the patient record and get it from several sources. You will be able to do that, which we demonstrated. You want to do some review of the medical mission, and be able to do the documentation of the encounter and order entry. And then it gives you the ability to recommend interventions, information. That we employ on the development team is a scaled agile framework. Team is quite large, so even within that, we're stressing the bounds of that methodology. As a team, we work very closely with the VA stakeholders. We want to ensure that we're given the functionality that they need. We, on a fairly regular basis, It really depends on the development team as to how regular they need to meet with them. But we meet on a regular basis and on an ad hoc basis with all the SMEs, all-around doctors, technicians, and leadership within the VA. Okay, so as I said, eHMP has essentially the UI and the back end. So in the UI, we are in the back end architecture. I'm sorry, we talked about the UI, so starting to talk about the back end architecture. It uses a Vista Exchange, source of patient data. Exchange is an API that is based on RESTful web service. It allows for the application to go in and talk to counters, order entry, right back, all the operators that are available through the UI. And then JavaScript, and it is developed as a single-page application, which static HTML served from a web server. So dynamic, and even one area.
How are we?
Okay, that's one was asking a question. The exchange and the eHMP UI are developed using an SDK that then allows us to get the cross-cutting concerns. Within the Vista Exchange architecture, there is the API, and then there's the cache. And the cache is a temporary store, allows us to get from VA sites, VLR, DoD. It replenishes that data as quickly as possible based on updates that are coming from those systems. It's for quick access to previously synced patients, and it doesn't require the constant connection to the database or to the various end data. So it does that, for the clinician to see what something that's recently updated, and with the upcoming write back technology, it will make the updates into those back end databases. The Vista Exchange cache is implemented with a JSON document database, uses Solr and rich text document store. And the patient data is stored in standardized terminology codes. Talking to the SDK is consists of two basic components: the ADK and the RDK. The ADK is the application development kit, which is for developing the front website or the client-side web application. The RDK is the call the application to then talk to the back-end resource. This provides to add incremental functionality to the web application. Does that using the ADK to develop applets, and the RDK to talk to the backend databases. It also for the kind of applets, the common library. You don't have to continually reinvent the wheel. And it keeps a consistent look and feel for the applications, so that each applet is very similar. There's not one applet that looks one way and a different applet looks another way. So it's a common look and feel for the user. Like I said, the SDK is consists of the ADK and the RDK. The ADK is built on JavaScript, Backbone.js, and Marionette and Bootstrap. The mechanism to arrange applets through common holistic application utilities and functions, and provides common calls and consistent visual themes. I'm sorry. Okay. also provides a mechanism for the designers to create screens, choose from predefined layouts, assign applets to regions, and gives a runtime shell for the application for the UI, and allows for the true screens. So the developer can then utilize all these common calls to provide the applet. I'm sorry. Okay, tripped up a bit on that one. Okay, then the second part of the SDK architecture is the RDK. The RDK is also developed using JavaScript, and it uses express.js. Deployed to a node.js and relies on the node package manager, packet management. You're responsible for providing server configuration, information about the requests that are passed through it, and it provides handles to common external systems such as the Vista Exchange Cache, Vista Systems, and so on. Now, this is something that was kind of in the suggestion from Peter that we discuss dependencies, and this was the question, so hopefully I addressed this correctly. Right now, our dependencies are based on the tools that we use. We have the tools shown on screen: Chef, Rolf, Gradle, Ruby, Vagrant, and Java. And the code that we are going to drop for there is also going to be based on this currently. The two applications or the components that we use that are non-open source are the AS and high stocks. APA turned off, doesn't need to be used, and high stocks can be replaced with eCharts, or I believe that high stocks also has a free non-commercial license that can be used. So just to try to understand how the community would be able to use it, and we're of the fact that we're not quite there yet. So I'm going to list some of the things that we're work through to get in that direction. So, question that was posed was, does it require access to Vista? And yes, it does. It does require access to a Vista. Currently, we use two different Vistas for tests, our test environment, so that we can make sure that we're pulling from two different Vistas. eHMP should run on any current full Vista instance, and allow for open source users to have their own test Vista and allow it to work against that. Okay. Currently, we use a Gradle process, and we use Vagrant and Chef to deploy out into the various environments. A question about the production configuration. Now what we do, because the VA environment does not have internet access, we have to use what we're calling a no internet access approach, and we create a cache of all of the deployment scripts and everything that is needed, and we download that into a centralized server, and then likewise download that into the various VA environments that we're deploying to. We then use Rake, Chef, and Vagrant scripts to deploy the components, set up the environments, everything that we need to do as if it was a internet, but in fact it is. And I'm really going to try to use this type of an approach to put together a deployment package for both the violations and for OSEHRA. So we're going to try to package it up so that it is relatively easy, being a relative term, but you know that if you use the correct suite, that it would work. to next steps. So next steps, our next open source code drop is March 2nd. A more robust code drop than the last one we did, but it's still not, we're quite aware that it's still not quite to the point of anybody being able to use it. To be in that you're going to have probably an environment fairly close to ours to be able to use it. So to the next bullet will be to create a more robust open source code drop, and we are planning on doing that within this development cycle. Hopefully have something close before or close to late May. We're also creating manuals and documentation. The one that's going to go out really is more of a on how to deploy the way we deploy today. Impossible for anybody else to do it, but it's just a little bit more so I want to make a much more robust one so that you can deploy onto any type of Linux or any type of environment. And then obviously we're also going to be working with the VIA Innovations team. We're going to create an open source development environment for them and allow them to hopefully work with them to then have them work out with a lot of the other open source community so that they can set up an environment to take against. All these things are going on right now. All the plans and discussions are going on right now. So I apologize if I don't have a whole lot of detail right here, but it is very important to us, and it is something that is of high importance to the VA leadership. So we're working towards that diligently. Okay, as time permits, I believe that we got lots of time for questions because I think I talked really fast. So Peter, I'd like to go ahead and open the floor up to questions. And we've got someone on the line that can answer those questions. I cannot.
We got people on the line, so please go ahead and ask any questions. Carl, you have a couple of developers also with you, right, to help you answer questions.
Yes.
Plan for a Git repository that we can pull from, and will you be accepting pull requests from bugs or enhancements that the open source community comes up with?
High level, yes, we are going to have a repository that the open source community should be able to pull from. And like I said, we're going to hopefully be able to put an even more robust in there that will, with very good instructions that will allow you to be able to build either a development environment to go against a centralized source, maybe an innovations, or to put the entire package and have your own, front-end and back-end development environment. Seeing applets from the open source community, yes, that is the goal. That is the goal of the SDK and the goal of this effort that we're doing in this development environment or development cycle is allow for that. How that happens, the process in which that happens has not been 100% defined, but that is 100% the end goal, is to be able to allow that to happen. Question okay?
That way.
Okay.
In your drop to us in May, would you have the configurations and the setup that you can have to do continuous integration based on the Jenkins?
What we're going to drop in actually next week is going to be essentially something that would require a similar setup to what we have currently. I believe would require Jenkins. I'm not 100% sure about that. If Actually, that's a good question. I will write down that question, hopefully have some answer back to you guys through Peter on the forum.
This is Nancy Anderson. Just what you envision, how you envision this working when it becomes into production throughout the United States for the VA. Do you expect to have instead of this cash that's going to be serving everybody, or cash place, or what are you thinking?
So the plan is to have multiple caches in, I think, regional locations, regional databases, and have that set up so that, the sites within a region would be pulling from a specific cache, and the availability to pull from a secondary cache if necessary based on the.
Also, do you intend to try and provide all the services that Vista has now external to Vista, or to tend to, or their conclusion, so to speak, and present it in your interface?
So we're not replacing Vista. We are hoping to present, and to be truthful, I don't know 100% of, present 100% of what is available in Vista, but we are to present as much the data as is needed by the clinicians and prioritized by the B. That's kind of
one thing I'm wondering, sort of wondering about is, for instance, inside Vista, are you planning to have some sort of hybrid those, or are you planning to try and replace them and do them outside of Vista, which I would not recommend, by the way, but I'm just curious what you're thinking.
I can take that question, actually. So right now we have a fallback mechanism to pull reminders using the existing CPRS RPCs. Long-term plan is still decided, but part of eHMP also includes a clinical decision support system. Now we're using OpenCDS, but other rules engines could be used, and that may become a alternate for clinical reminders in a future increment.
That reminders serve a lot of other purposes inside Vista, not just reminders. So you need to prepare to replace all of that in addition, which I don't think would be a good idea. But anyway, I will yield the floor.
On the slides, you said data in the cache will be stored with size terminology, but there's all the data in Vista right now that is not associated with any standard terminology. So I'm going to do that.
And that up to the developers.
Hi, this is Seth Gainey again. We actually use existing terminology mappings from a few different sources, mostly from JLV tables that were used in JLV, previously called Janus, to map D and VA terminologies to a standard code set. It's not always perfect. Sometimes there's local IDs or there's not a VUID assigned, but it's we could always add on to, and for most applications it works quite well.
Standard is Nancy again. What standard code set is that?
I think Carl had an earlier slide that described them. It's LOINC for labs. Let me scroll back to it. Right. CT, IC9 for problems, RX, NORM for meds, LOINC for labs, CPT for procedures, I suppose.
Good, thanks.
And all the health factors that exist in VISTA have been mapped to a standardized code?
Can't say for certain, and I doubt that is the case.
So with those
Cases we obviously cannot map by plain text, and we have to assume that it has no standard terminology, and we just account for that in the application.
Hi, this is a follow-on question from that. So data that is not mapped to standardized terminology, does that still show up on the UI? It's just not standardized, or is it omitted?
That absolutely shows up. It just does not show up with a standardized code set.
Another question, why the choice of Node.js for the resource server?
Oh, that's a good question. One of our previous textures was implemented in Java using Drop Wizard to produce resource servers that could be horizontally scaled. As we kept working with that, we realized that a lot of our use cases could be better served by Node.js runtime, especially since we were investing heavily in client-side JavaScript. So it allowed us to simplify the architecture. And as we keep developing, we find that it does suit our needs quite well.
Okay.
Disconnect from this little thing here. Connect.
Questions?
Is anything going on with trying to interface with the DoD with this, or is this independent of that?
Absolutely. But by with the DoD, we do it in very much the same way that JLV did, which is that we access data through the BHE relay using Meta Stack, and we're then able to display DoD data incorporated with data from one or more VA sites.
In the drop that you're going to be providing in the coming month, it will include the VX cache, right?
That is correct. And in fact, the existing code drop for R1.0 also includes the VX cache. It just happens that that's the majority of the code base in that particular code drop. So the one in March will include as well the UI and the resource server, which makes it a little bit usable.
We'll install in that particular drop. You will have the installation to install stuff related to the cache, including the solar platform, or some component will be missing, or just.
So we're going to we definitely everything we can to provide a drop that is deployable. As you can build the artifacts, it won't come with a better install manual that describes how you could deploy it using your own Vista test servers and your own instances of Solar and JDS, or install those if you need to. So yeah, there are artifacts for deploying to Solar, deploying to your day runtime, and so on. And those will all be included in the March release.
Can you explain, please, Nancy, how you're building this cache? You may have explained it, but I don't know what all the technology is that you're talking about, so I don't think I've heard it explained. How are you building it?
The Vista Exchange cache is actually the core integration point of the system, and it is almost entirely based on the work that the Salt Lake eHMP team accomplished with their eHMP or HI2 project, previously called Aviva. We would not have been able to accomplish what we accomplished in the last year and a couple months without the work that they've done over the last 5 or 6 years. So the core technology is based on that approach, using a subscription and publication mechanism on the VISTA server that allows us to capture data and receive updates to patient data from a VISTA site, and then store it in a UL JSON database. We call it JDS. It's as a temporary cache, so that if you've already retrieved it once, it's much quicker to update it. It's much quicker than the UI. We've added the ability to pull in other sites, for example, DoD or Vealer data or patient data, store it in the same cache. We've added the terminology transformations. We've added additional fields to the VPR data model that we're using and storing in JDS.
Using the VPR RPCs to retrieve the data from VISTA?
Absolutely. Just to say they're being retrieved by a process that's running asynchronously. It's not like CPRS works. It's not a direct connection to a VISTA site. Rather, it's a kind of it's a subscription and publication mechanism that's constantly pulling updates from a VISTA site, and it allows us much scalability than a CPRS model would, because we don't have now one connection per client. We have one connection per VISTA Exchange cache, and that we can support many more clients to eHMP.
Where is that, if that doesn't exist, the cache that you have to directly in to get specific VISTA instance to retrieve the data?
It does. For example, clinical reminders was a good example of that. But we are trying to minimize, if not eliminate, those situations. For the most part, during normal operation, the only time that you would have a direct connection, or a user-specific connection from the Exchange to a particular site would be login time, and if you were doing any kind of security auditing in the DG security RPCs.
Cache is something you're planning to keep all VISTA data in, or most recent, or all patients, or some patients, or what?
So we've thought about this a few different ways. The way it works right now is that if a user requests a option, that data will be added to the cache, and it will remain there until it's moved by an administrator user. That means that over time the cache will get, of course, bigger and bigger, or to purge it at some point. And of course, you could purge it. There would be nothing stopping that other than the fact that you have a day. If you went back to that patient, you'd have to do another sync of your entire historical record before into the cache again. That wasn't a very clear answer. I hope that covered it.
What NoSQL database are you using?
I've actually written one. Well, Kevin Meldrum wrote one, implemented in MUMPS. Very similar to CouchDB, if you've ever used it, but it's actually a custom application written in much standard MUMPS running on a cache server. We use JDS for JSON. I think it's JSON Data Store. Correct.
So we can run that on GTM, right?
It does call some cache-specific routines for, I believe, opening TCP connections. If you to update those lines, I believe it should run on GTM as well.
Okay.
JSON Data Store is compatible with the JSON that you see on the standard JSON, or is it a specialized form of JSON, like the
Oh, no, it's standard JSON. In fact, we've used it as a operational data as well, because it's useful for what it is.
How did you write your own M-based database instead of using an existing NoSQL database?
It was already done by the eHMP team, and it was fairly robust and well tested. Also, I believe Mongo is prohibited on the TRM, and CouchDB is not listed at the time we were looking at it. We had looked at using Mongo. We had also, at one point, implemented a version of the architecture using a MarkLogic database with which can't support JSON if you really want it to. But you know, to be honest, using the work that the eHMP team did was it was good, and we really would not have accomplished as much as we have without that architectural work.
Stores the rich text, that's the index them that or cache the M store, right?
Talk more to that question. The reason why there are, well, obviously they're serving different use cases. Solar is supporting full text search, support certain types of nested arrays. For JDS, which actually has a certain level of knowledge about the VPR data structure, knows how to index that data. It knows what clinically relevant dates to sort on. You can define your own types of collections and your own types of optimized queries for it. So they are very different use cases. We've kept them separate for that reason.
Curious, the next drop you have, will it have the ordering capability built in, or is this mostly still read only?
So in version 1.1, we did work on different types of write-back or order entry, and for the most part, it was to support ONC certification, which we did eventually that we weren't going to focus on as heavily. But we do have resources and applets for creating and entering error for allergies, problems, non-VA medications, and are disabled by default. You might have noticed on the screenshot that was on one of the screenshots from the presentation, there is a plug in the upper right-hand corner that says mission. In addition, on each of the applets, there would be a plus button. To click on an item in an applet, it would present the options to edit it. And this is configurable, so we've taken out most of that in this version of the application that's deployed, but it is still available, and it will still be in the version 1.1 code drop.
I understand what you just said. You said that you've got clinical data that's stored in the VISTA system, FileMan or something like that, and a copy of that information gets put into the cache. Presumably it's organized a different way than the information in the VISTA store, or the advantage of duplicating the data like that?
The advantage is that we no longer have to go directly to a VISTA site to read the data. Obviously, write-back is a totally different use case, so it's useful to keep those two very separate. For read data, though, using the VISTA Exchange cache is very useful. Allows us to fetch the data, And we can do things like the terminology transformation, the full text indexing, rich text document conversion, for example, of DoD data. Those are some really expensive operations to perform. To the cache, we do incur a cost where we have to now know how to get the data out of Vista and keep that data up to date. But advantage is that there's a much better performance and scalability to it.
Here is that also allows, but by putting it all in the cache instead of making local calls to Vista, that also was what allows us to have Vista sites all in a cache, and it also allows us to be able to normalize across all of the other sources we have, like DoD, as that were mentioned. So that's kind of other advantages that are there.
What was the question again?
Your D data goes into the same cache as the Vista data?
That's
If you're bringing Vista data and making it rich text, and you're using DoD as rich text already, do you foresee that the notes, et cetera, inside Vista will ultimately become rich text also?
You have confused some part there. The rich text only applies to DoD notes, progress notes specifically, which come from BHE as a rich text document. We do not have rich text notes in Vista.
I thought you were talking about you need to be rich text for searching. I guess I missed something.
So rich text here refers to a document format.
Right.
So the document format called RTF, and that's what we're specifically speaking about when we speak about rich text.
Okay, can you go back again and talk about what you needed for searching?
Sure, and that's what we were referring to as full text. In the screenshot here, it's the search record feature in the upper right-hand corner, right below new observation.
Gotta get back on here.
And supported by Solar. So if we skip to the next screenshot of an example of as you're typing, it can provide search questions and autocomplete. Actually search through Solar, which is searching the same data that is synced in the Vista Exchange cache and occurrences.
Like I was somewhere ahead, I shouldn't have been connecting rich text in this, but they're not.
Just maybe read the screen just a little bit. Is that the searching through like discharge summaries, problems, progress notes, or any other places? Not this free text search is not limited to just progress notes. It literally searches most object that the patient record would have.
And so the test place now, they're pulling this off the tools menu and using it as a way to view data elsewhere, or what's being done with it?
I believe in the pre-prod sites we have or we are going to add it to as a CPRS tool, and it is being used in conjunction with CPRS, not as a replacement at this point because we've turned off the write-back functionality and order entry functionality, but it allows you to use things like the full text search or timeline search, which we don't have a screenshot of, and some of the other features that provide graphical representations of the patient data.
Is it integrated with CCAL or with CPRS via CCAL?
It is for both patient context and user context.
Thanks.
Is the Centillion Vergence Vault proxy a COTS product, or is that other?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a COTS product. I don't believe it's even widely used outside of the VA. For the OSEHRA drop, it would at least our bindings to it. You don't have to deploy it. It's actually a separate Node.js execution. A separate process that's on the resource server.
Would do what we usually do with CPRS, which is turn off CCOW and still operate.
Oh yes, in fact, that's how we run it most times. Since when we're testing locally, we don't have a scintillant fault either, so we simply don't use it.
Will the upcoming release have code in it that will transform CCDAs and CCDs and XML documents into the required VPR format?
The answer is no. We are working on that currently, so I believe that's going to be part of the next release, which will be in at least 2 months.
If those get brought in, do you know what's going to happen in terms of making it clear that that data isn't primarily from Vista, but it's from someplace else?
Go back to the screenshot. I can show you an example of how we do that now. And the first one. So right now, in the current version, we have community health summaries in the bottom right, which is so we've kept data segregated. And right now, we're looking at how we can incorporate that and display it in line with the other applets. So if there was an allergy record in CCDA document, you could find it into the allergies applet in the upper right-hand corner. And how we would display that, it's not yet clear. For some of the labels here, we put always the facility on the right-hand side. So if it was from DoD, the facility would say it's from DoD. If it's from a Vista site, you'll have the abbreviation for that Vista site, and probably also have an abbreviation for VELR or the source for the community health summary.
Okay. Are there any cooking to work on reconciliation? For instance, if a problem were brought in from the outside and considered outside, but then you decided you wanted to make it part of the formal Vista record, is there a reconcile that?
I know it's been talked about, and our analysts are looking into it, but we haven't started development on it as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Yeah, cache. Is that something that could be used by other applications, or is that pretty HMP specific?
The VX cache is exposed through the Vista Exchange API, which provides you VPR model data and also FHIR model data from the cache. So it is consumable by other applications. We have a short list of VA projects that are interested in using it as a way to retrieve Vista and DoD data and community health data. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, thanks.
With the mobile app team to use that for mobile application?
Connect Health is one of the potential users, but we haven't spoken with them directly yet.
I see.
Speaking of applications, I know that the VA has worked on a number of mobile applications for both the veterans and for the staff. Is this really going to be the back end for Delta?
I would say there's no plan for that. We don't specifically develop this for mobile devices. It's developed for IE and versions and the scooters that the VA uses. We have tried it on an iPad. It does work, but we don't specifically try to make it work.
So being developed for Internet Explorer, how specific do you think it's going to be for Internet Explorer? Do you think it's going to be usable on Firefox and some of these others, or do you know if it is?
we routinely test it on Firefox just because, we run Mac development machines. So it works fine on Chrome and Firefox. I guess the only problem you would have if wanting to use IE would be if you want CCAL to work, you obviously need an ActiveX plugin. That would not be an option without IE.
Not much to worry about because last time I pressed price T and there's nobody in the world except the VA who probably can afford it.
Any questions? We only got 4 more minutes left.
Well, it's given us some insights into some of the things you're doing, so thank you for taking the time to do this.
You're very welcome. It was our pleasure.
Another quick question is, I know indexing still speeds things a lot, and for a non-programmer, is always indexed inside the MUMPS database for the cache indexed?
Yes, there is indexing in JDS. I think Christopher Edwards can talk more to that.
There's extensive indexes that drive most everything that you see on the screen. So most the queries that the UI does to the backend resources are all driven off of indexes. And it's one of the ways that we can get some of the fastest response times for this, and being able to hash a lot of data together for timeline views and other things, to be able to get usable timelines and usable graphs, very separate types. There's definitely a huge amount of indexes that are in play in this application.
How much disk storage is indexing and how much is primary data?
I don't have those stats.
I also do not. Not too sure on that.
The indexing on the M side is very efficient. So I can tell you it's going to be way smaller than the actual data itself. The way indexes work is they use a pointer to the actual data type. So it's more a reference of, oh, you're looking for this data. Here are all the access for that, and if you need to actually get the data, go retrieve the full object. So it's not like index is a very heavy disk operation. It's more just a list of IDs or unique identifiers. Match index.
I'm looking at the overall Vista 4 product architecture document and wondering how and I'm also looking within there then the initial eHMP VSA system integration view, which kind of illustrates some of these things you've been talking about. I'm wondering if you foresee an issue or how this overlays on top of the VSA architecture, and especially in terms of like the DAS, because they do some things like the cache type of mechanism you have going here. It seems like all those things fall to DAS, or more of that feed information sit over there, and whether or not you'll foresee down the road that you're going to have to somehow re-architect where some of these things are placed.
We've been in discussions with VSA, as well as the kiosk project, which is also we're on Vista.js. At this point, we realize that our usage of RPC Broker is, probably one of the bigger scalability and performance risks we have. So we've been looking at VSA and Vista.js as a potential solution going forward, and long term, those will be the mechanisms we use for direct Vista connectivity.
As well, though?
It's not clear on the cache, because the cache was and the subscription and publication and mechanism it uses were optimized for RPC Broker. by itself is not so much a risk. Really, the ways we would, the concern we have about direct Vista connections are more for, write back, order entry, login, doing security auditing as well.
I was curious, and when you said that RPC broker is one of the security risks, in what terms do you mean that?
I'm sorry, did I say security? I meant performance and scalability, and it's really because the stateful connections that we have to keep open.
Well, I would just say that actually it would not be too difficult to change it from stateful to stateless. It's just that when it was created a number of years back, we hadn't thought of that, and no one had really mentioned it to us until fairly recently. So I don't, it could be stateless without much problem at all.
Concept.
The team I asked them to do a presentation, and they're looking to do that sometime in March. One of the issue that they couldn't do earlier was that they were looking at EWJS as a way to access the. I'm looking forward to hear from them in next month. Well, 2 after 5. Just you couldn't imagine, half hour, more than half an hour of Q&A. Thank you, Carl, and your team for spending precious hours on providing all this great information to the community. We look forward to the drop, the version 1.1, I believe, that will be coming to us in May, and looking forward to play with it. And additional question, please send that. There's an email address on your screen. Please forward additional questions to them.
To additional questions, thank you, Peter. I want to thank Christopher and Seth for participating. They give a lot of help in the presentation, and obviously a lot of help in answering the questions. I want to thank them.
Our recording's ready tomorrow morning. I'll send out an email. All right? Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.